Hello and welcome to another episode of R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, editor-in-chief, and today we're discussing rethinking operator-led growth in the restoration industry. My special guest is Jeff Todd. He's the Chief Franchise Development Officer for ServiceMaster Restore. So we're going to dive into the nitty-gritty, but before we do that, I'd like everybody to welcome Jeff. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Kayla. Really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming on and talking about a really cool topic here in our space, right? We know there's a lot of owner operators, but growth and mindset really are detrimental to what we do every day in the industry. So the first question I kind of wanted to start off with, and I think this is going to relate to the industry 100%, is why is owner-driven localized expansion outperforming faster top-down market entry approaches in our industry today? And how has that shifted ServiceMaster's development strategy?
Yeah, great question. And so for ServiceMaster Restore, we already have national coverage, right? And so for us, that's great, a good milestone that we can cover coast to coast. But how do we're looking at how do we better serve our customers and meet their needs? And restoration is inherently personal, right? Whether it's someone with water damage, fire damage, or storm impact, they could be in one of the worst days of their life, right? And they're stressed out, and they're looking for someone that can help them through that they trust, whether it's with their business, their home, or property they manage. And so in these moments, you're not just looking for coverage on a map, but someone in your local market who you can trust, whether that's from personally, like, or that you go online and you can see that they have a business located 10 minutes away from your house, and they have lots of reviews of people who've trusted them to see them through this tough period. And um, and so with that, for us, as we look at expansion, it's how do we better position ourselves to be close to, where our customers are by working with operators who have proven, letting them, go deeper into those markets.
No, that's a great way to explain it too, because I know what we do is very personal, and it's not just about having a location on the map. It's a variety of things, your customer service, relatability, the level of care, but also, relatively close in distance as well. And I think it's really important. I talked to John the other day about this very instance and the importance of, focusing on where you can serve best, not necessarily having locations all over the United States or what have you. Finding the markets that really truly need the service master touch, if you will. So, with that being said, what operational advantages come from adding additional locations with an existing market, and how does that improve both the customer experience and the franchise performance?
So adding locations within a market can add value for both the customer and to the franchisee for a number of reasons. First, when you're thinking about the customer, when they're in that moment of need, they want a fast response. And so if you're trying to service the whole metro and you need to drive across town, it can take an hour, 2 hours, or more with rush hour, right? And so and for that customer, that's an eternity. So for us, better staging and knowing where there's customer and where there's demand, helps us respond quicker. But also too, again, it goes back to that proximity. When they're searching for help, they want to see that someone's local to them, understands their area, and has a presence. And again, local reviews, people who have worked with this person, know them and trust them. And so, and for us, for the operator standpoint, there's a lot of benefits too, where as you're looking at staffing, it's you if you're trying to cover the whole city but have everybody commute across town, some people might not take that job. So if you have a couple of different office locations where someone can be based out of, that can help with employee recruitment, but also cut down on employees' drive times where you're not spending money on someone sitting in a car, but you're doing the important things, doing sales calls or doing the work to remediate a situation. Furthermore, you can have equipment stationed throughout a city. So if you're finishing up on one job, you get called to the next one. You don't have to drive an hour to your distribution location and then drive an hour back. And so that can again save time to be doing what's most important, working with the customers. And outside of just from an employee standpoint, there's great visibility by adding more locations again, so that your customers can see you as they're looking for you, and you can get reviews locally. But another big factor is you don't have all the same costs as it did to start one location as you would for adding a location two or three, where you have some fixed costs such as accounting, finance, marketing, and even the owner or the leader's costs can be spread across these organizations. So by adding more locations, there's an opportunity to improve, the margin profile of each individual location. Now, it needs to be done, smartly using data to make decisions on where you place locations and where you don't. Placing a location to place a location does not drive value for anybody.
No, great points. And I will definitely say too, owner operators are in the community that they live in, they're serving, right? And I think to your point, when you're in a big metropolitan area, 20 miles can actually be 2 hours of, commute time, which means, to your point, the customer's like, oh my gosh, when are they gonna get here? And that's, it's stressful for them. They don't understand. And that automatically, that's their impression right away. Even if they know it's 2 hours away, it's still one of those things that's like you're affecting the customer. But your point too, you mentioned equipment and just resources. If something were to happen, you can mobilize and still serve the customer in a timely manner, if you will. And you don't have to worry about sourcing equipment or sourcing staff because of, the locations within your general area. So with that being said, this all goes into development and strategy. So from a development standpoint, what criteria signals that a market is ready or overdue for increased density? And I know this one's a touchy topic, but I think it's really important to your point. You can do it right or you can do it wrong.
Yeah, so for us, when we're looking at adding locations or adding density into a market, there's a handful of factors. And first and foremost, ServiceMaster Restore is a data-driven company, and so we're going to look at what is the population in an area, and like what's that ratio to operators we have in that area, and like the locations that we're operating out of. Then also they'll look at like what's the commercial building density, number of apartment buildings. So just really try to understand the lay of the land. So from there, we can peel the onion back a layer and we're going to look at how are we, ranking in different parts of town. So are we able to find our operators easily when we go and do a search from X or Y or Z zip code? And if not, that's a concern that, we aren't, if we're not ranking well, that maybe we should be in that area, right? But we got to, still dig in. Now let's say, are there a lot of insurance adjusters in a certain part of town? And we have data to tell where the insurance adjusters are. And are we, one, do we have sales activities where we're calling on them? Or two, have we had referral business from them? So if we're not even calling on certain adjusters, that's real indication that we need to go into that area to form those relationships because and so, looking at all these different factors, we can determine if there's truly a value to adding a location in a certain area. And we've completed that. We've the mapping exercise across the country. So we have, center point zip codes, in every metro where, the data tells us we could add a lot of value for our franchisees and for our customers by growing.
No, those are really great points. And I would say too, data is king when it comes to expansion. You can't not just say, oh, this looks like a great place to open another location and not understand the lay of the land and the actual demand for your services because the last thing you want to do is open a location and then have to shut your doors, right? So that's really well said. And I will definitely say leveraging the relationships or the referral partners that you have, but also the people that you work with or don't work with could be a great indication on where you should be. So, how can brands strategically support multi-unit operators when they're scaling within a market without losing the hyper-local responsiveness that their customers so truly depend on? Like you said, we're in a world where they depend on us in a time of need. So, what does that really look like in your lens?
Yes, from my perspective, I think, there's a lot of models out there that are owner operator and they have a single location and they operate within those four walls. And that those owners may be critical to the lights coming on in the morning, the lights turning off at night, right? And that's a great model, right? Where they can be out there and be local and and working that business, right? And for us, we offer that model, but we also offer multi-unit expansion, right? And so first and foremost, you really need to, as you're thinking about starting a franchise or independent, it's in my view, you got to learn how to crawl, walk, and run. So first and foremost, how do you operate within the four walls, right? How do the lights come on in the morning? How do they turn off at night? Like, how do you do the sales calls, right? And what services are you offering? Are you offering, a one-stop, solution for, mitigation and reconstruction, right? And from there, once you're operating well within those four walls, the question is, are you critical to the lights coming on in the morning and turning off at night? Because if the business can't function without you for a day, then you can't add in two or three locations because you're bottleneck that business. So there's a playbook for running a location, right? But then there's a playbook for how you go multi-unit, how you go from one to two. And it's really just comes down to people, systems, and processes. Have you empowered your employees enough in a location to make decisions, right? And then you have systems and process in place to see are the KPIs being done correctly, right? Are you making X number of sales calls? What's your conversion rates? And so do you have the visibility into that so that you can go and work on location two and three or multi? And so if you understand what's happening within your four walls, you have visibility into it, and you have a good team there, right? Good sales folks and people doing the work. You can maintain that trust in your community, that presence in your community, and add on to it because you create a scalable business with replicable processes.
No,
Um,
I was gonna say, not to cut you off, but holy
yeah,
smokes, you just gave everybody a playbook that they needed in about 2 minutes, if I'm being quite honest. Like, you have to make sure that your foundation it's not ever gonna be perfect, but it's to where it needs to be to function without you. And your staff is, to your point, empowered, and then that customer service never suffers, right? That dependency never goes down. And I think a lot of times we see that unfortunately happen. That's just the lay of the land. You're like, oh, I've got this one really successful location. I'm gonna go open in two, three, and four. And then you look back and you're like, well, maybe I didn't have everything down that I needed to have in order to go multi-location. I mean, that's you don't have to do it fast, just do it right, I think is what it really comes down to, right?
yeah, take the first step, just learn how to crawl. And then some people, common mistakes are some people are too anxious and they want to move quickly. And going slower in the beginning can allow you to go really fast later. And for me, anybody who I'm talking to who owns a business from a different industry or within the industry, I want to sit down just like this. Preferably, I can't always do it in their business and see, can we get through an hour conversation without being interrupted? Because if you keep on getting interrupted, then they probably don't have the systems in place that people can make decisions, right? And so no, so anyways, that's my one of my tests for that.
No, that's actually a really good point because I think too, an hour is a very small part in time. To go open a business, sometimes you may not be reachable for hours, maybe even days, depending what's going on. We do have trade shows in this world. There's education. You have families. If you cannot sit down and even go through a lunch without your phone ringing or whatever the case may be, that's a tall tale sign that, hey, maybe there's some things that we need to work on. And that's any
Yeah.
industry, to your point. It's not just this one. This one, however, customers really do depend on us to get back into their home or business in a timely manner. So, with that being said, and we know that the restoration space is continuously growing in competition, which to me, competitiveness is healthy, but also the contractor to consumer ratio is not even close, and so there's always going to be work for everybody. What does building density the right way actually look like? I know you touched on this a little bit, but and how does ServiceMaster differentiate itself and its approach from other industry professionals in this space?
So from my perspective, as restorers looking at growth, it is first and foremost what do our clients need? What do our customers need us to be, right? Where do they need us to be? And so first and foremost, it's what services are we offering, right? And so for us, we want to be a one-stop shop. And so that's not just doing the mitigation work, but it's doing the reconstruction work. And so we're actively investing in programs to help bring our whole network up to be able to do both mitigation and reconstruction work. And we're already, offering a great deal of reconstruction work. And so one, it's what service are we providing, right? But then two, a big buzzword every single where you go is AI, right? Data, technology. And for me, restoration is real people helping, people in the real world with real problems. But we can still use data and technology to improve how we communicate with customers. At Restore, we have an estimating tool to help, increase accuracy and speed of estimating repair, or mitigation and repair work to, drive that process. So we're incorporating data and technology everywhere we can. And then from that, the last piece of it is where we've done analysis for the whole country on and have identified exactly where we can add locations that will create value for consumers and for our operators. And then with that, we've gone out to our network and asked, who feels like they're ready to grow, right? So that way, and we're obviously going to make sure we're aligned that they are, ready to grow. So that way, we're helping put our operators in the right markets to grow, and we feel that they're ready to take on that growth and then drive value for our consumers. So that's how we're approaching it.
Yeah, no, I think that's the smartest way to approach it, right? There's several variables and able that enable you to grow efficiently and effectively. And I think, everybody has their own set of data points, everybody has their own wants and needs and business plans and strategic goals that they need to meet. But, I think I said this to John the other day, like obviously we're not McDonald's. We're not in the world of having a McDonald's or Starbucks on every corner. It's just not what we do. And so it's a more strategic decision, right? Those are something that people want and need on a daily basis. We just happen to be there when, things aren't always the best. And the times that those happen, you still want visibility, but you want it to be as strategic as possible so that the business is still profitable, right? At the end of the day, we are running a business. And if we could, we would be like McDonald's and Starbucks, right? Where we have locations on every corner. We're just not there yet, but we will get there probably eventually because we know that the world is growing bigger and bigger every day. But thank you so much for sharing your insights with me today. I can't wait to have you back on again. Before we sign off, any closing words that you have or thoughts on maybe people who want to better understand, is going and growing your business the right opportunity for you? I think you said it best though. Walk, crawl, walk, and then run. And the mentality behind that is you'll grow, but not right now in the beginning, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think just like advice I have is, create a be a long-term focus, but set reasonable expectations early on. And by doing that, you can see these businesses really snowball and they gain in size really quickly. But those are the ones with the right foundation that grew methodically first. And for those interested, one, we're actively looking to bring in independents and have them rebrand, but like bring them under our umbrella and help them grow and scale. Those who think we could be a good partner for them. And so they're welcome to reach out to me if on this, or if you just want to talk about growing, like not joining Restore, I'm happy to talk to you as well.
No, that's great. I would definitely say too, we know that we depend on our industry partners, whether they're quote unquote competitors or not. We're all serving the consumers at the end of the day. So if you are listening, take Jeff up on his offer because he does come from a very interesting space that I think he can provide you some great insights. So for all of you watching, thank you for tuning into this episode of Ask the Expert. Take care.